Okay, welcome. Good to have everybody back. Let me go to play on this. All right, here we go. All right, as usual, let's fly through the agreements here. We know all of these. Video on is preferred. Be respectful. Be quick. Be curious. And if you got AI, no problem. As long as you're also in the room. And feel free to connect afterwards as well. One of the big reasons behind having a mastermind is the ability to kind of go, oh, hey, you know what? I've dealt with that. Let's dive in there elsewhere. Um, okay, so selected format. Um, we'll do some selected intros. I've modified the intro slightly, the intro slide deck, so we'll spend a bit more time on that. We'll go over our topic. We're talking about decentralized command, and we'll finish off with some closing takeaways. Okay, so I have added to this. Um, so as usual, I want to circle back to you because I know that you had something in the first one. So if you want to go ahead, reintroduce yourself again, and then tell us a bit about your current goal. Where have you met success, or where are you experiencing a stall, and why? Um, so if you want to,
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me and see me? I'm not
yeah,
sure. Okay. Yeah, my name is Jules. I'm the owner of Coastal Design Landscaping. We have a residential landscape installation company, so we create gardens. We love to bring people outside, doing it by creating beautiful outdoor spaces. Um, my I guess my or our biggest challenge has been for a while now, HR, finding people, finding good people we can trust and leave to do the work. Pre-COVID, I guess, we had a really good, successful stretch where I've been completely off the tools, let the car drive itself, deal with clients, deal with designers, work on the business. And that hasn't been the case in a long time. So hiring, onboarding, um, we keeping people is not an issue. I think we found a pretty good formula to keep people that we like. We just can't find people that we like. So that's our main goal, our main challenge right now. I'm not sure if that was the only question, Ed, or did I miss
yeah, that's
something?
perfect. Yeah, you totally nailed it. Okay, so who wants to comment or kind of talk about some strategies that they've had in regards to this idea? You can generalize it; doesn't have to be specific to what Azul's talking about. But
I'm
if
happy to speak on that. I mean, I was at the start of the call as we were kind of signing in. I was saying to Edwin how I'm happy to see a decent little uptick in some of the applicants that we've been getting. And I'm not sure how far removed our industry and plumbing and HVAC is from landscaping as far as finding good talent, but I'm assuming that there would be um, a lot of similar frustrations in trying to find great people that will stick around. So we've seen a bit of success lately with the sponsored Indeed posts and paying the. I think I've just put in a $10 per day limit, so that it flips the post to the top of the um, ad chain, and it boosts it. I put a limit on there for 15 days. So for $150, we're seeing a pretty good funnel of applicants come in. So I'm that's not exactly a revolutionary idea to post a boosted ad on Indeed. I'm sure you've probably done that, but as I think you mentioned there, Joel, the culture each strategy for lunch, right? So creating the culture within the business and hiring to your values and your mission statement is another um, key piece to our success. A lot of the best hires that we've had come in the last few months have all been referrals, internal, and we're incentivizing those those referrals with cash bonuses. But it just seems that naturally using the network and having our team be our recruiting force has been at a macro level the most successful strategy. So lots more I could say on the topic, but I'm happy. I would love to chat with you more if you'd like some support offline. I can be hopefully of some help there.
Yeah, the internal cash bonus, the internal referral bonus is pretty good. I know your guys is quite generous, and it's reaped some benefits for sure. Um, so yeah, that's really great. Um, Reagan, why don't you jump on for your intro here? Thanks, Joel.
Morning, everyone. Greg and Dunn. My current title doesn't really match what I'm doing these days. Director of Operations at a company called Offworld. We make video games. We're most famous for a game that's kind of like Call of Duty, but tries to be more realistic. It's called Squad. And we recently released a game called Starship Troopers based on a movie from the 90s. My current goal is trying to wake up. Being a bit of a smart ass response there. No, my current goal is more biz dev focused. I've got a long history of biz dev in video games. Times are tough in the video game industry. I'm not sure if you guys have heard, but tons of layoffs. Cash is hard to come by. Very few investors. Making new games is harder than it's ever been. So I'm trying to find some work for hire work. We're fortunate that our game Squad keeps spitting off money year after year. But we're trying to maintain our company size, and so I'm working on finding some work for hire work. I was at a trade show last month, had a lot of success, and uncovered three major leads. One of the major leads, like multiple tens of millions of dollars work for hire opportunity, and we're one of the few companies that could build that game. And then there's two or three opportunities that are smaller budgets, but would help band-aid things for a little bit. So that's my major focus right now. And things are going pretty good, all things considered, despite the industry being in a bit of a tough spot.
What's causing
Um,
that industry downturn?
yeah, interesting you should ask that. There's a 224 slide presentation that's going around the industry like crazy that some guy pulled together that tells the whole story. Long story short, people are playing games like Fortnite and Counter-Strike and League of Legends. They're playing these games for a decade. You're no longer playing a game for 3-6 months and then buying a new game. So everyone's getting locked into their favorite game for years and years and years. And so when you launch a new game, you're trying to convince people to move away from what is essentially now a part of their life. It's worked into their daily schedule. They've invested thousands of hours into these games. They've invested hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into those games, and all of their friends are on those games. So it's really hard to pull them away from their established game. They're called black hole games now. It's just like this new term that's being coined. So 70% of time played is being spent on games that are 7 years or older.
Wow.
And the statistic of time played of games launched in 2023 is astounding. It's like 6.5% of time played was spent on games that were launched last year. And last year is one of the biggest year of launches in the video game industry's history. So, if you've got a game like chess, who needs a new game like chess? When you make a good game and it can stand the test of time, and the industry is very mature now, and there's loads of games that are the video game equivalent of chess out there now. So it's tough times. Luckily, my company has a black hole game. Squad is a black hole game. It's been around for 10 years and has more people playing it every day and every month than it's ever had in its history. And people play it for thousands of hours. So we're lucky. We're one of those lucky companies. But it's hard to grow.
Mm. I mean, there's so many moving components there. There's the loyalty component. There's the changing of the habits. There's trying to capture new market share or take away existing market share. There's so many different moving parts there to try to monitor. I'm guessing your data analytics is vital.
Yeah, we're pretty we're pretty rudimentary on the analytics side of things. Analytics hasn't been such a big thing on console and PC games. It's been a huge thing on mobile, which I had a lot of experience in, and we're ramping up the analytics front on at our company under me, but um, hasn't been a huge focus for us to date. We're trying to change that.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. All right. We're going to be talking about decentralized command today. And where does it work? Where does it not work? I'll be asking you guys a bunch of questions, and we'll have some discussion. I've kind of structured this one a little bit to take it slightly easier on my throat. We'll restructured it slightly, so you guys can have a way more voice today. Um, First of all, let's define decentralized command. What are we talking about? Who wants to take a stab at what decentralized command is without looking it up on ChatGPT?
Decision making strategies.
Decision making, yeah, effectively. And how are you making those decisions across various levels of the team?
You're empowering other team members to take something and run with it and trusting their decisions.
Yep, for sure.
I keep thinking of Navy SEALs.
Yeah,
when you say
exactly.
that.
And there's lots of different strategies to this as well. Like there's the whole idea of decentralizing. But now some people make a mistake here, and what they do is they think decentralized command is just like getting someone else to just do it and never knowing what happens. That's not necessarily decentralized command, right? That's like no command. There's another component here as well where are you just deferring your decision making way further down the line and then vetoing decisions late? That's also not necessarily decentralized command. That's just getting other people to do a whole bunch of work that may or may not matter once it comes to you actually making the actual decision. So it's like, no,
Yeah,
no,
to
yeah,
me,
no, I totally trust you to do it. They should present their thing. You're like, yeah, we're not doing that. That's not necessarily decentralized command as well. So it's the best areas where decentralized command works is where there's a fair level of autonomy and there's the ability to apply um, high levels of expertise towards a specific skill or knowledge. Like why would I step in and tell someone who's really good at something better than I am specifically how to execute on the output of something? It doesn't make sense. So it leans very heavily on proper training, proper development, the ability to get people to be able to apply the thing that they have applied themselves to already. Those are all really important components. Okay, so we're going to talk about these primary topics. Yeah, Duncan.
I just wanted to add, like, the two words that come to my head are leadership trinity and having hyper awareness on how all those people fit into your business. Obviously, cadence of value meetings. Andrew and I were talking about this. Like, you can have so many meetings in a week, it's easy to consume yourself. But if they don't have relevance and you're not tuned into all the movements and the plays that are happening with your team, then those meetings can be somewhat, dull and you're just going through the motions. So I think the leadership trinity was the biggest one for our company, having a clear understanding of who's really good at what and putting them in the right seat.
Yeah, for sure. And the leadership trinity, 2 points of that are authority and accountability, right? Activity is the third component. Maybe we'll spend one whole session on that as well. For sure. It's why I put it first here as well, the authority and accountability. Giving someone authority and no accountability is a problem. Giving someone accountability and no authority, also a problem. And so you have to have them in balance. We're going to talk about efficiency. Where does decentralized command help with efficiency? Innovation and creativity. Crisis or crisis management. The bigger you get as a company, the more you have to focus on this. There's companies that are large size they have just crisis teams. Like that's the thing. Um, your company culture, does it drift or does it solidify with decentralized command? Tech, how do you scale with decentralized command and employee engagement? Okay, so first question for you guys. When we're talking about this idea of empowerment, authority, accountability, whatnot, what are we really trying to do? Like initiative comes to mind. Responsiveness comes to mind. So in a decentralized command structure, how do you maintain accountability? Who wants to take a shot at that one?
Maybe setting up a debrief every once in a while, being able
Yeah, that's
to get that
fantastic.
information brought up.
Setting clear expectations. Just because you're decentralizing command doesn't mean that you can't clearly communicate what your expectations are and then hand over the authority to do those things and then have a touch point where that accountability steps in.
I think making a clear level of authority understood at the beginning of the task. So, hey, take it to this point, having that clearly laid out. And then if it goes beyond that or gets out of that person's comfort level, you can sort of swoop back in. But until then, you stay off.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I was
like a trigger point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
great.
was,
I
I was
think
just gonna
trigger
add
point is
to
fundamental.
sorry, everyone. If there's very clear KPIs, then almost the KPI will do a little bit of that management for you. You're either hitting it or you're not. You don't need a human to intervene. It's very clear by metric.
Yep, fantastic. Okay, so we're talking about trigger points, setting the stage early. So sometimes when we think about decentralized command, we are immediately saying, hang on a second, reactivity is not what we're talking about. There's a high level of requirement for pre-planning here. You guys have been talking quite a bit about the idea of setting up your launches with way more robust approach. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think we're in the home building. Everybody has got their own scopes, but we've got a lot of moving parts. And I think the best successes that we've had have been the projects that have been really set up in the right manner, right? When we've kind of lacked the pre-planning or started projects with missing information, or just again having the team have a very clear understanding of what the project looks like from start to finish. Like now we roll out with all of our site supervisors. We never used to do that. We just have upper management. We'd roll out a project charter, basically, through and through. We'd spend 4-8 hours just like literally looking at the project in a whole prior to starting that project. Now we're bringing our younger team members in, so they have a very clear idea of that as well. And I think it's been a game changer on our end, just like the level of buy-in that they have, right? Like they feel a part of, and they feel a little bit more accountable because they have a clear role established in that job as well. And we're also trying to do some incentivizing, right? So we're looking at doing bonus structures per project for guys versus just like a typical bonus structure, right? So I think incentivizing, helps as well on the accountability side of things.
Yeah, fantastic.
Can I say one more thing? I think there's a lot of value in a good CRM for managing some of these other people underneath you, because you can't always be there to make those decisions when you have a metric to track it. Like we've just sort of dived back into our CRM and realized we're underutilizing some of its capabilities. And so we're really making a push to have everybody on that. And it's just so clear when there's someone that's failing, right?
Yep, fantastic. Um, what are some of the risks then about responsibility here? Is there a risk of lowering or diminishing the amount of responsibility someone takes?
Not exactly sure the context, but I mean, it might lower their confidence, or might think that you've lowered their confidence, that your confidence is lowered in them if you're pulling responsibility away from that person.
Okay, great. Yeah, perfect. So you gave them some responsibility, now you're pulling it away. What would cause you to pull away responsibility from someone in a decentralized command structure?
Well, you got more efficient. Could be the positive reason for it. You figured out a way to manage that variable without, needing to burden that person with that responsibility.
Mhm.
Lack of knowledge or improper training, potentially.
Visual, you're
I think
thinking
with I think with the job title comes an expectation of certain tasks that some people may not be able to handle, and you sort of put them into this mold, and sometimes that doesn't always work. So having a, test the waters theory and then proof is in the pudding kind of mentality, you'll see that they can't achieve those things you've given them responsibility for, and they aren't using their authority effectively, and you have to remove it because it's not getting done.
Yeah, 100%. So how fast should you act on that?
Like ripping out a band-aid just as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's like a triage, right? Like, is it a gaping wound? Is suddenly something being exposed, or is it going to require a bit more nuance as well? Experience will tell you I wouldn't say there's a, if this, then that sort of workflow tree on it. This is why people in higher positions are paid higher wages, to make those hard decisions at the right time in the most effective way. That's well understood by the people below them for sure. Okay, so what about this idea of efficiency? Where can decentralized command improve efficiency? Uh, who wants to take a stab at that?
It's
Well,
turning into a bottleneck. Like you don't become the bottleneck as like the decision maker on everything if you can empower other leaders in your organization to have that authority and accountability.
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
I was going to say it removes bureaucracy a lot of the time. Um, we operate like that here at Offworld. Each of our game teams is relatively autonomous. They have monthly milestone meetings where they have to present their progress and their future plans, and they can be challenged at that point in time in their direction and the choices they've made. But no one knows their project better than they do. So we rely on them to make those choices, and most of the times defer to the choices that they make.
So you're putting a lot of weight on the project lead then.
Yeah, 100%.
And when the project lead succeeds, what's their incentive to make it succeed? And when they're failing, how do they know?
We have revenue targets for our games. And other than revenue targets, you would have retention targets, and by retention, I mean player retention targets or some other KPI within the game that they're trying to change. Um, and other than that, if a game isn't developed and not out yet, it's all about hitting their milestones, making sure that they've delivered on the milestone, making sure the game's on track, on time to launch in the window that we've assigned to it.
Mhm. Okay, but there's some objective metrics there for them to try to hit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
I have an interesting one here. I think when you are hitting your efficiency well and the people are executing their projects effectively, you automatically start giving them more authority and accountability. As they rise through the ranks, they obviously get monetary rewards, bonuses, things like that. But really, the thing that you're rewarding them with is more opportunity.
Yep, fantastic. Okay, so we talked a little bit about decision making here as well. And how fast can someone make a decision? Now, what about the difference between, say, small decisions and what we talked about several sessions ago, which is key decision-making power? How do you make sure that small changes don't bump into impacting key decisions? So like, okay, this is really what we're focused on. High-level executives have made these strategic initiatives around what's going on, and then all these small decisions are actually bumping those key decisions out of the way. How do we prevent that?
Strategy, like knowing that those small decisions play into the larger goal, and all of those do have effect. If you don't have a strategy before, Tyler said it really well. Having a very good goal and plan at the beginning of the project is going to allow you to see what's going to be the decisions that will need to be made as you go through the motions. And if you've done it a couple of times, you can kind of strategize, hey, this is going to come up. How are we going to handle it? A, B, or C. And you can empower someone else to make those decisions as you go and watch it, guide them, support them. And when the bigger end goal or strategy comes into play, you're going to have witnessed that 6 months of small decisions that led up to it.
I think also a clearly communicated vision. Like the most important thing that you can do is and I know we talked about that a ton at the workshop. That's really stuck with me. So like if your vision is in everything that you do, then that's going to reflect in the small decisions happening in your business too.
Yeah, to me, I think that's the biggest one is if people with decentralized decision-making power don't know what the big initiatives are in the company, they have to know. And if the people at the level of making big decisions in the company don't know, well, now you got a bigger problem, right?
Ed, it sounds like a very efficient system, but it needs to be very well planned and very precise. There needs to be a very clear hierarchy, pretty much like military, because if it's an environment that needs to be highly controlled. So yes, you are delegating and giving everybody authority and accountability, but it needs to be very well organized in order to succeed.
Yep, and it's also going to change based off of scale. So and how fast a company moves. Like if you have a project life cycle of 2 weeks, that's very different than a project life cycle of 2 years, right? And then what are the milestones within those two variances? In a 2 week cycle, what's the biggest day? There's going to be a biggest day somewhere in there. Is it once the layout is done? Is it once the initial plan is created? Is it before people start coding? Like is it when the inventory shows up? Like what's the biggest day? And then in a long phase project, what's the biggest month or a specific phase, right? Understanding those key milestones is important because then that's when it might not decentralize, it might move up. But those have to be very clearly delineated, and someone has to know. You can't leave it to chance for sure. There are some very heavily decentralized versions, basically like cells, where you can have a cells type structure in a company where it's all these different things, and then you can have what has the illusion of a decentralized format, but it basically is like a spokes of a wheel, where you have all these offshoots, but they all funnel back to one central hub. So there, like air traffic control is a key way that works. Like this tower commands all of this airspace. The second you enter that airspace, that's who you're talking to. Like that's a spoken wheel format as well. So how do you design your company, right? Is important for sure. Okay, so crisis management, or let's go to innovation. Does decentralized command, most of you guys are more in an innovative state than a crisis management state right now, I would say. Does decentralized command create more innovation, more creativity amongst teams?
I
Has
think
anyone
so.
seen an example of that?
Well, that's the goal for us at Offworld, is that it leaves those creative decisions to the game teams. No one knows their project, their game better than they do, so they know the nuances and they know their community, their customer better than we do. So we would expect that empowering them to make those choices and giving them that freedom allows them to make those kinds of creative calls that having more overseers above them would prevent them from doing. They'd basically be pushed in directions that are more standard, more typically industry expected directions for their games.
Um, have you ever seen someone step in and screw that up?
I would say that one the for yeah, I have. Um, Sometimes you have to let people fall on their uh, a chip on their own decisions. Uh, Sometimes I don't know if this applies to other people in the room, but uh, our game has lots of people that have played the game for years, and a lot, and often our team listens to the people that play the game all the time and don't think about the new players. And unfortunately, our game isn't like a lot of new games that are out there right now. We don't make a lot of money off of our players that are in the game. We make all of our money on new players. So a lot of our game designers are really embedded in the hardcore community, and they're making choices that make the game harder and more challenging and more complicated, which alienates the new players. So we went down a 6-month rabbit hole on a particular change to the game that made the game suffer for new players for a little stretch there.
Mm. Yeah, great. So they innovated on this creative cycle, but it was targeting one specific market, and that was the market that was actually the
Already
market
in the
that was
game.
making the most
Yep.
amount of profit.
Yeah, which we'd already made the money on. Yeah.
Right. It really comes back to the thing that we always talk about, which is know who you're trying to target. Um, I've come up with a whole new format of this. I'll work with some of you guys on exactly how to go through it. But there's a really, really strong way to figure out effectively 12 to 16 sub-market categories for your companies. That's something that we'll tackle for sure. I successfully ran 4 hours of a strategy session with that format, and it was a game changer. So, okay, let's talk about company culture. Um, Decentralized command, how does it impact organizational culture? How does it impact mindset? What kind of people are you attracting with that? And does it make more sense for certain types of companies versus other types of companies? Who wants to take a shot?
I think if you've hired for cultural fit, and you're hiring and your questions in your interview process are selecting for people that match your value system, then decentralized command and allowing those individuals to be and act as they are because they're already aligned with the company's values is the key there. I think that's something that doesn't require management and oversight. It's already been vetted. You've gone through the process of the onboarding stage. You've hopefully had those individuals meet key members within the organization, and there's been alignment established throughout that process. and therefore they are aligned with your culture. That's why they got offered the job in the first place, and let them be free.
Yeah, fantastic. I love the for and against each value interview format. You ask a question for a value, you ask a question against a value. Situational. I think that's one
Give
of
an
the most.
example of asking a question against a value.
Yeah. So, for example, let's say, let's use one of my um, core values for ambition. So, I would say, a for question would be, tell me about a time where you drove a team to a pretty lofty goal, and how'd you get there? That would be a for ambition question. And then an against ambition question would be, tell me about a time when you had to throttle back what you thought was going to be possible, and why. So I want to know a for and against that value. Um, to use Ty, you and I have been talking about this quite a bit. Um, you know, one of the one of the core values um, in Ty's company is collaboration. So a for question would be, tell me about a time when you had to sort of pull aside a little bit of what you wanted to see happen and had to work with others to achieve a goal. That would be a for collaboration. And then another one would be like, tell me about a time when you drove something through, even though the team wasn't behind you. And you're asking for actual situations on a for and against for all your values. Absolute game changer when it comes to who you end up hiring and the truth of what you end up getting in those questions and answers.
These are good. Thank you.
I think once you have the right people in place, as you're decentralizing, finding the people who enable your company culture and represent it very well and elevate them is how you continue that culture down through that trinity, through that, the leadership trinity. Like as you go to the next leaders, they're going to see that person elevated because of their culture, and you don't there have to be the one representing it anymore, where you were always that person that was the culture, and it becomes the next generation, right?
Yeah, they become ambassadors.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, Duncan, and it's kind of been scratching my brain for the last few minutes. I think decentralized command is really essentially finding who's good at what and allowing the company to delegate to the people that are good at those things instead of just finding one person, 5 people, 10 people, and giving them all the power, even when they're not necessarily good at certain things. Is that correct to assume, Ed?
Yeah, well, I mean, Duncan, why don't you respond to that?
Yeah, that's totally what I meant. And also, if your client base, let's say, I know you're very forward facing to your clients, you're probably part sales, part operations, right? And I've been in that exact same role. And as you pull away from that, you're no longer involved in those interactions. And so you have to make a very good selection process with the people representing you. And so getting to know them through all these other things we've been talking about and testing them. But at the end of the day, you're not there to see how they're representing the brand, and there's a lot of trust. But having that right selection process is so key for you to be able to pull away at all.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, I'm going to skip tech because I think that tech is important, but I think that I'm just going to say that I think that there are opportunities for tech to enhance communication, to increase collaboration, and that's where they work best. Speed of response is where I think tech really ends up helping with decentralized command structures. Say like Teams or WhatsApp or chat or getting accurate drawings at the right time, like all that kind of stuff. Um, but I'm gonna skip past tech only because it's a rabbit hole. I know most of you are trying to scale. So as you're using a decentralized command structure, where is it effective and where does it start to fail as the business gains complexity? Like what are the limits and how would you navigate um, complexity issues?
I'll go. I think that there's a scaling. We just said what promotes good company culture. You can also lose that by scaling quickly. You can also lose touch points and uh, you will go back into crisis because those people are unfamiliar with how to handle those situations if the right training hasn't been there. They may not know their authority or accountability levels clearly and could bobble when holding the ball. Um, they may not do things as efficiently as they once were done by their predecessors. I mean, there's a whole bunch here, but I think, and they may not understand the tech, the company culture may be a different mindset in their head than it was in yours. So as you decentralize, scaling brings a lot of risk.
I like that term. I think that sentence is a brilliant sentence. That scaling can bring a lot of risk. So how do you mitigate against that?
I mean, through awareness, if the person you're handing the ball to enables like 70% of that and is showing you that they've done it for a while, you have to take that leap of faith and watch closely, monitor, have your team around you monitor, like not babysitting or policing, but knowing that if they need support, you can jump back in if necessary in a way that doesn't undermine them or take away that accountability. It just supports them and shows them, hey, you went a little off the rails here, but we can get this back on track and I'm going to hand it back to you. But in the meantime, I'm going to support you. Right. I think that you have to take the leap of faith. I guess is the best way to say it. At a certain point, you can't do everything.
Yeah.
I think you have to remain ruthlessly consistent in your hiring practices, though. If obviously when you're hiring out of necessity, it's a very different thing than hiring out of a place of abundance. So, always looking for great people, whether you have the spot on the roster for them or not, is I mean, I recognize it's easier said than done, but never turning away a great candidate, planning for what's coming down the pipe 12 months down the road. And building your bench always would be a key piece in that wavelength.
I would also say if you're going to decentralize command, I would centralize your training, your onboarding, and have a really robust resource system because part of the understanding of stepping into a role of authority and accountability is even understanding what that means. And that's a gap that I see in a lot of companies.
Yep. Absolutely. So there's an irony there. Really good for your market, Ashley, good for my market, is telling people that they can empower their team if they end up centralizing a really powerful training
Yep.
Format. And that might be different across different tiers of the company.
Yep.
Right. I mean, Andrew, you've been working super hard on your guys' training program, and that's gonna absolutely show fruit. This comes back to another really key component. I like this term. This term has kind of really come into my lexicon in the last year. And it's a term attractant. That is your company attractive to the workforce? If you think about it that way, you're gonna build in structures. You're gonna build in empowerment structures, training structures, incentive structures. You're going to start to create systems to become an attractive company. The more you become an attractive company, the easier it is to market to the people who want to work for your company. It's a very different mentality than a hunting mentality. No, you might need some. You might need to hunt. But if you've been building out all this stuff, how do you market that to the workforce to say, hey, we built out all this stuff?
I had three of my guys write our hiring ads in the past,
Mm.
just as an experiment. They have more to say, not more to say, but different angles about the company from my own. So I wanted to explore that. I thought that was kind of cute. Didn't result in too much, but it was fun.
Yeah. And if you're a small team, attracting someone who wants to be a part of a small team is different than someone who wants to be part of a larger team. The benefit of a larger team is there's a more like a stronger idea of what the identity of the business is, and there's less risk. Like, oh, I'm a part of a company that's 150 people. There's less risk, right? You're like, they can sustain this many employees, okay. Whereas if it's like, oh, you're like four, it's like, okay, I'm now 20% of the team. So I'm gonna be a way bigger impact than if I'm one of 150. Like I'm less than 1%. But how do you leverage that as a strength? But you're not attracting the same type of worker. Because it's like, well, I want to lead a big team. I want to become a leader of a larger team. Okay. Or is it the complexity of the project? So your team is small and agile. Like you have to be able to know what your business represents. So, when we're talking about employee engagement, we're talking about this idea of um, what type of person would be satisfied being in the role that they are relative to the type of command structure you have. Like if you're like, oh, we're decentralized command, then you micromanage someone, they're gonna be like, what? Meanwhile, the opposite is also true. If you're someone who's like, sorry, I'm not gonna act until you tell me what to do, you're gonna have an issue with fit. Doesn't mean that either worker is better or worse than the other. It just means they haven't been brought in with the right level of expectation, right? So there's talent attraction and there's talent retention. Both those two things are tied directly to how much you decentralize your company. I have a very strong philosophy on make sure everyone understands what I like to call critical mass, like your planet, like what's the gravity well of your planet. Once you have critical mass, you have gravity. And what does that represent? Okay, so let's talk about some real world examples, either for you in your company or what you've seen happening with other companies out there, what you've read in New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Business in Vancouver. It doesn't matter. Like where are you getting your sources from? Who wants to share one or two real world examples, or share one, and then we'll move on to someone else's real world example. Maybe it's healthcare, maybe it's tech, maybe it's um,
I mean, I can share from a hiring perspective, like in the staffing industry across industries, because I've worked with small businesses and I've worked with very large enterprise systems, and each one has their own complexities, but definitely from a recruiting standpoint, who you're looking for, like a lot of times people approach it from a skill set standpoint solely, and they're not thinking about the bigger picture. What does the current culture look like? What does the team look like? Like you said, who am I looking to attract? What voices are missing in the organization? What innovation is missing? Like it's such a bigger conversation, and we are more apt to just kind of tell our managers or tell our directors, hey, just find somebody who can do XYZ. Here's a generic job description we've had for the last 5 years. We've hired 2 people off of. The other thing that I've seen too is people not realize that, like you said, there's retention and then there's also attraction. And everything you do is your culture. So when you interview people, when you lay people off, when you fire people, like everything has, and in marketing, it's promoters and detractors. And I like to say it's the same thing with your people. Everybody's going to be a promoter, neutral, or a detractor. And everyone talks to someone about your company and the experience that they had. That can be referrals, or that can be don't work for that company. So I think, I mean, that's just from a recruiting standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, how I see like lack of training and development when it comes to attraction and really setting the culture and tone, but then also the authority and accountability. You see a lot of red tape too, and how you're making hiring decisions and what job descriptions you're using, depending on the size of the organization.
Yeah, really, really great points. There's a company I was speaking with recently. They want to change the way they do all their performance evaluations. They're a little under 400 people. I'm like, great, who's doing your performance evals? They're like, oh, those 2. Two people are going to do 400 performance evaluations.
Super common.
They're like, well, they're the only ones who can do them. Like, so let's just say each of them does 200. Right.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming that they're pretty good packages. So let's say they get 4 weeks vacation. So you've got effectively 48 weeks. So 80 to 85% of their work year is going to be performance evaluations. Like they're going to be doing like 1 a day, 85% of the days that they work. It's like, man, it's not possible. They have to decentralize it. I know at Paris, this is happening right now where we ran through all of the PMs and all of the foremen. Now the foremen are going to have to start doing performance evaluations on their people below, right? Like you can't, otherwise it's impossible. Like how are you going to hit 100 staff?
Also, you don't know them as well as those people who are dealing with them daily. Like you're out of relevance there. You don't know them like they do. You can't lead them. You can't really critique them on their day to day at all.
You're checking a box. We do performance reviews, and you also have now leaders who are out of touch with their own team too, right? Because they're not assessing their performance. They're just managing them. But what does that really mean?
Exactly. All right, let's go to some key takeaways. Gregan, well, I want to run through everybody. So, Gregan, key takeaway.
Key takeaway is that I often doubt how much autonomy we give to our game teams, and hearing the talk today just made me more confident that it's the right choice for us to make. And I'm happy that that's the way we run things.
Yeah, nice. Monty, key takeaway.
Gave me a lot to think about, absolutely. And it also reiterated how valuable having your values and your mission statement clearly defined to give to that new hire and build that culture. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yep, nice. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, so just really trying to think ahead before hiring who you're looking at hiring. I think I've been at fault of hiring based on skill versus the kind of thinking of the team culture. Just trying to get my hands on some more quality people, right? Some more qualified people. It's tough when I think Andrew said you're hiring out of necessity. versus out of abundance, right? So I could see how the things that I've done, the times I've hired out of necessity, I've neglected a lot of these kind of aspects when I think about it. So it's really good to remind me. So yeah.
Nice. Andrew?
KPIs for me is the one that resonates. I obviously said it, but it's a hot topic in our office here, and having those clearly defined KPIs that everyone is aware of and knows they're responsible for delivering on. I think the more we can hone in on that, the easier our collective job becomes, just managing to some clearly set goals and metrics.
Ty, what about you?
I'd say I think just the we're right in the thick of this right now. So like the process behind everything, right? Like KPIs has got to be a part of that. But you just see like after the session, just how all of this kind of intersyncs on a a company level, right? Like there's just so many moving parts, and it's really opened up my eyes of a kind of a more focus on this in how I'm doing my hiring process, which is what we're working on. We're kind of going into that scaling factor right now too, and it's just there's got to be a really clear plan in place, right?
Yep.
So
Joel?
Yeah, I think for me, pretty similar. I think having the clear expectations and clear visions of the final goals throughout the entire team, making sure everybody knows where we're headed as a company. We're a smaller company, so it's probably a lot easier. But I also like how we spoke about the making the company attractive to the workforce and focusing on the different variations of that.
Yeah, for sure. Doug's?
Yes, I think creating a job description that empowers the level of accountability and authority. Like, I know that's easier said than done, but having that clearly delineated right then will help so much when you do have to pull back. It's like, well, this was, and I think more than just having it on a piece of paper, like really living that and reminding people what level of authority they have and exercising that.
Mm-hmm. Ashley?
A lot of takeaways, but I would say for me and just my business, like some new thought process on how I can communicate to clients why, like yet again, why training is so important for especially new managers that are stepping into authority for the first time. The impact they have on culture, the impact they have on hiring, turnover rates, all those things. I think just honing in some of the language and the way that I attract and I communicate that to clients. And then it also kind of got me thinking about the return to work stuff that's been going on and just kind of, I think there's a little bit of a power struggle going on in that regard. And I'm in the US, so I don't know if you guys are seeing this as much in Canada, but we're seeing a lot of that. And I think part of this comes from a lot of micromanagement going on in companies and not decentralized command. And so people are trying to hold on to their quote unquote authority of where they work. And I think that when you give people buy-in, it makes them want to show up no matter where they are because they're bought in, they're making a difference, they're empowered to show up and add value. So just kind of got my wheels turning on that too, and just some of the conversations going on in that space.
Fantastic. All right, cool. All right. Next time, March 28th. I know a few people have messaged me. They were sick. Lee had a baby, so he baby just showed up. So if you see Lee, congratulate him. So there we go. More babies coming into the mix. We'll see you guys next time. For those of you I'm working with every week, I'll see you guys next week.
Bye, Edwin.
Thanks, Edwin. Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Hang loose.
See you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.